It was a normal Tuesday morning in late June when Dana Roberts, a 27-year-old news anchor, vanished without a trace. The city of Clearwater, a quiet, seemingly perfect place in the heart of America, would soon be thrust into a nightmare that still haunts its streets to this day. Dana's voice echoed over the phone line at 4:30 a.m. as she called in to let her station know she'd overslept. A quick apology before she hung up. "I'll be in soon," she said. But she never arrived. Her car, a silver sedan, was found parked in the station lot, its keys left dangling in the ignition. A trail of personal belongings, her handbag, a blow-dryer, a shattered pair of heels, was scattered near the front door. The smell of her perfume still lingered in the cold morning air. Her disappearance would soon be labeled a cold case, but those closest to her knew better. Before we dive deeper into this mystery, tell me, where are you watching from? Drop it in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more chilling true crime stories. Dana's life was a mystery, one filled with unknowns, hidden fears, and suspicious relationships. And now, it seemed as though someone had been waiting for her to slip up. Clearwater was never a place anyone imagined danger could strike. Known for its small-town charm, good schools, and tight-knit community, it felt like the type of place where nothing ever went wrong. Dana Roberts had worked at the local TV station for 5 years. She was well loved by the community, a bright and ambitious young woman who had worked hard to make a name for herself. But Dana wasn't just any news anchor. She had a reputation for getting the real stories, the gritty truths that no one else wanted to touch. And that made her both a hero and a target. There was something off about the days leading up to Dana's disappearance. A few weeks earlier, Dana had reported on a controversial local investigation involving a string of burglaries in wealthy neighborhoods. A source had tipped her off to a connection with a high-profile local business owner, Martin Hayes, whose company was linked to a series of shady deals. Dana had been pushing for more answers. She was digging, trying to uncover the truth. And in doing so, she had made some dangerous enemies. Her last conversation, just hours before her disappearance, was with her best friend, Carla. They had talked about an upcoming weekend getaway, a way to unwind after the tension Dana had been feeling. "I'm excited to get away," Dana had said, her voice light. But there was something in her tone that day, something Carla couldn't quite place. It was as if Dana knew something was coming, something dark and unavoidable. It was almost as though Dana knew she was running out of time. Dana never made it to work that morning. When her car was found in the station's parking lot, it was clear that something had gone horribly wrong. Officers arrived within minutes, only to be met with an eerie, unsettling scene. The keys were still in the ignition, but there was no sign of Dana. No struggle, no blood, just her scattered belongings and the faint smell of her perfume. Detective Ray Collins, who had been on the case from the very beginning, remembers the first time he stepped onto the scene. It didn't feel right. "This wasn't a random disappearance," Collins said, his voice heavy with the weight of the years that had passed since that fateful morning. A forensic team was called to investigate. A partial palm print was found on the side of Dana's car. It didn't match any known suspects, but it was clear that someone had touched her car with force. The print was smudged, as if the person had been in a hurry or trying to cover their tracks. The question on everyone's mind was, where was Dana? What had happened to her? As the days turned into weeks, the investigation into Dana Roberts' disappearance grew cold. Detective Collins and his team were frustrated. They had nothing, no evidence, no suspects, no motive. The city of Clearwater had been turned upside down, and the locals were scared. But despite the fear, they all seemed to hold on to hope. Dana would return. She had to. That hope was shattered when the first breakthrough came in a most unexpected form. A phone call. It was from an anonymous source, a man claiming to know what happened to Dana and offering up a chilling piece of information. I saw her that morning. She was with someone. She looked scared. She didn't want to go. The call was short, but it set the investigation in motion again. The voice on the other end had an unmistakable tone of fear, almost as if the caller had seen something he wasn't supposed to. The next few weeks were a blur of dead ends and false leads. But then something shocking came to light. A man named Chris Klein, a former colleague of Dana's from the news station, had been seen near the scene around the time of her disappearance. Klein had a reputation for being a bit of a loner. Quiet, but with a temper that could flare up when provoked. When questioned, Klein denied having anything to do with Dana's disappearance, but the inconsistencies in his story raised more questions than answers. What was he doing near the station that morning? Why had he never mentioned seeing Dana? Detective Collins was skeptical. There was something in Klein's eyes, something that didn't quite sit right. But there was no concrete evidence to tie him to the case, and the investigation stalled once again. As the investigation languished, another shocking twist emerged. A mysterious note was found at the scene. It was unsigned, written in sharp, precise handwriting. It's been 3 weeks since Dana Roberts vanished without a trace, and the investigation has been full of twists, false leads, and dead ends. The breakthrough finally came in the form of a chilling anonymous phone call and an unsettling note left at the scene. But the call wasn't just a warning. It was the first real piece of the puzzle. Detective Collins paced the dimly lit office, the note in his hands, trying to piece it together. "I know what you've been doing. You can't hide forever," he murmured, his voice barely above a whisper. Was it a confession? A threat? Or just another cruel attempt to mislead the investigation? The call had come from a man who claimed to have seen Dana in the hours leading up to her disappearance. Someone who knew something, but was too afraid to come forward. Dana's disappearance had captured the attention of Clearwater, and the pressure was mounting on law enforcement to find answers. The investigation had reached a fever pitch, and each new lead was scrutinized carefully. But even with the growing intensity, there was still a sense that something, or someone, was slipping through their fingers. Dana's close friends and colleagues were holding on to hope. Carla, her best friend, could hardly believe Dana was gone. She refused to accept that Dana had just disappeared. "She would never leave us like this," Carla said tearfully. "She was too strong, too smart." But there were things Dana had kept hidden, secrets that Carla didn't know about. And that was where the investigation turned next. In the days leading up to her disappearance, Dana had been seen with a man, someone who, up until now, had stayed far under the radar. The man's name was James Foster. He was a local contractor, a guy who had been working on renovations around Clearwater. No one knew him well, but Dana had been spending time with him. Some said they were seeing each other. Others thought it was just a casual fling. But no one knew for sure. The day Dana vanished, Foster was nowhere to be found. He didn't show up at work. No one had seen him since the day before. His truck had been parked outside his house, but his phone was turned off. In the quiet hours before sunrise, he disappeared, just like Dana. The authorities dug into Foster's background, finding nothing suspicious, until they discovered a connection to the mayor's office. It turned out Foster had been working on projects tied to the mayor's family business, and that relationship raised some questions. Was it possible that Foster had been involved in something darker? Something that linked him to Dana's disappearance? The connections between Foster and the mayor's family were murky, but they were there. There was talk that Dana had uncovered something she wasn't supposed to know. Maybe a cover-up, maybe a dirty deal, and maybe that's why she had to be silenced. The detectives started piecing together the timeline, matching Foster's movements to Dana's phone records. Their last contact had been just hours before she was last seen. But Dana's phone call to the news station at 4:30 a.m. had been her last known communication. Detective Collins made it his mission to find Foster, but he was nowhere to be found. The whole town seemed to be holding its breath. The pressure was on, and everyone wanted answers. Then, something unexpected happened. A tip came in, not about Foster, but about Martin Hayes, the local businessman who had been linked to the recent string of burglaries Dana had investigated. The person on the other end of the phone sounded breathless, almost frantic. "I think I saw him the night Dana disappeared. He was at a bar, just sitting there watching the news on the TV," the caller said, their voice shaky. "And he was with Foster." The connection between Hayes and Foster was something the police hadn't fully explored yet. But now, they had to act fast. As the investigation continued, the more Collins learned about Hayes, the more the pieces started to fit. Hayes had a reputation for being ruthless, willing to do whatever it took to get what he wanted. And he wasn't about to let Dana, or anyone, get in his way. But what was the link between Hayes and Dana? Why had she been digging into his shady business dealings? Had she discovered something she shouldn't have? Or was it simply a matter of a woman caught in the wrong place at the wrong time? Detective Collins and his team returned to the scene at the news station, hoping to find something they had missed. The palm print on Dana's car had been smudged, but it was still the most solid clue they had. They decided to re-examine the area, this time with fresh eyes. They found something, a small thin hair stuck to the seatbelt in Dana's car. It wasn't hers, and it wasn't Foster's either. The discovery sent a chill down Collins's spine. This wasn't just a random act. Someone had been in Dana's car, had touched her things, and had tried to hide their tracks. But whose hair was it? And why was it left behind? The next day, Collins received another call. This time, it was from a witness who had been reluctant to come forward. They claimed to have seen a figure, the same one from the bar, standing near Dana's car around the time of her disappearance. The witness didn't see the person's face, but they were sure about one thing. The figure was wearing a dark jacket, the same as the one seen on Hayes in a photo from the previous night. The pieces were starting to fall into place, but something didn't sit right with Collins. Why was Hayes involved? Was he the mastermind behind Dana's disappearance, or was he merely a pawn in a much bigger game? As Collins prepared to confront Hayes, the phone rang again. "This is going to change everything," the voice on the other end said. The investigation had been at a standstill for weeks. But then, Detective Collins received the call that would shatter the case wide open. A new witness had come forward, someone who claimed to know exactly what happened to Dana Roberts the night she disappeared. "This is going to change everything," the voice on the other end had said. The witness was nervous, hesitant, but insistent. They had seen someone leaving Dana's car the night she went missing, and, even more chilling, they had seen the person's face. The truth, it seemed, was finally within reach. But would it be enough to bring justice for Dana? As the days passed, the investigation took a dramatic turn. Detective Collins and his team carefully combed through the new information provided by the witness, a local bartender named Carla Jennings, who claimed to have seen someone leaving Dana's car late at night. "I didn't get a good look at the person's face, but I could see their jacket. It was dark, almost black," Carla said, her voice trembling. "They looked nervous, like they were running away from something." Carla had been working a late shift when she spotted the figure walking quickly toward the alley behind the news station. She hadn't thought much of it at the time, but when she saw the police near Dana's car the next morning, she knew something wasn't right. Carla didn't initially come forward because she was afraid. But something had been eating at her. The figure she saw matched the description of someone she'd seen around town, a man named Martin Hayes. The connection was shocking. Hayes had been one of the first people of interest in Dana's case, and now it seemed like the threads were starting to come together. Hayes was involved. But how? The evening of Dana's disappearance had started like any other. At 4:30 a.m., she'd called the station apologizing for being late. She sounded rushed, but upbeat. It was a common call, but as the clock ticked, Dana's silence became something more than just a missed shift. By 6 a.m., there was still no sign of Dana. And by then, the police had already discovered her abandoned car in the parking lot, the scattered items, the palm print on the door. Nothing made sense. But it wasn't just the crime scene that didn't add up. Detective Collins had been investigating Dana's relationship with Martin Hayes, a local business tycoon, for days. Hayes had been seen at the news station, and his connections to Dana's recent investigation into corrupt business dealings were becoming harder to ignore. Had Dana discovered something incriminating about Hayes? Was that what had cost her life? As the investigation progressed, Collins realized that the connection between Hayes and Dana wasn't just about business. There was something far more personal at play. Hayes had been in town for years, building his empire from the ground up. But his success wasn't without its dark corners. Rumors had circulated for years about his shady dealings, his manipulation of city officials, and the under-the-table transactions that lined his pockets. Dana had been digging into all of this, and it was no secret that she had been preparing a report that could expose him. It wasn't just about the business. There were whispers of an affair between Dana and Hayes, a brief, secretive fling, one that had ended badly. Hayes had denied it, but there was one person who knew better. Carla Jennings, the bartender, had seen them together a few times in the weeks leading up to Dana's disappearance. And she wasn't the only one. It wasn't just about revenge or business anymore. It was about something far darker, a betrayal that had been simmering beneath the surface. Dana had been digging into more than just business deals. She had been uncovering the truth about Hayes's personal life, his web of lies and deceit. But would this new information be enough to prove Hayes's involvement? Or was it just another layer of confusion? Detective Collins decided to return to the scene of Dana's disappearance one more time, this time with a renewed sense of urgency. There had to be something they were missing. As he examined the area again, he noticed something he hadn't before: a small, crumpled piece of paper wedged between the front seat and the door. It was a receipt from a local restaurant, one that Dana had visited just a few hours before she disappeared. The receipt was dated the night of her disappearance, and the name on it: Martin Hayes. Collins couldn't believe it. Hayes had been with Dana the night she vanished, and now the connection was undeniable. But how had Dana ended up in the parking lot of the news station hours after her dinner with Hayes? And why had Hayes been so quick to distance himself from her after she disappeared? As the investigation took another unexpected turn, the pieces began to fit together. Martin Hayes was officially brought in for questioning, and this time things were different. The evidence was mounting against him. Hayes's initial denial was now starting to crack. His story changed. First, he claimed to have been nowhere near the news station that night. But when Collins confronted him with the receipt, Hayes's demeanor shifted. He claimed to have left Dana at the restaurant, but he couldn't explain why he'd been in the area when Dana disappeared. The new evidence was damning. And as the police dug deeper into Hayes's background, they discovered something even more chilling. Hayes had hired a private investigator to keep tabs on Dana in the weeks leading up to her disappearance. Had he been keeping an eye on her, knowing that she was getting too close to the truth? The walls were closing in on Hayes. The private investigator, hired by Hayes, had been questioned, but he refused to cooperate. However, he did let slip something crucial. The night of Dana's disappearance, he had seen Hayes meeting with someone who was not supposed to be involved. The name, Chris Klein. Chris Klein, the former colleague of Dana's from the news station, the man whose alibi had always been shaky, was now back in the spotlight. What was his connection to Hayes? And what had he been doing the night Dana vanished? As Collins sat back in his chair, staring at the case file, the last piece of the puzzle clicked into place. But the question remained. Was it too late to stop what was coming next? The investigation into Dana Roberts' disappearance had taken a shocking turn. With every piece of evidence uncovered, the truth seemed to slip further into the shadows. Detective Collins had chased leads for months, but now he was closer than ever to unraveling the web of lies that had been carefully spun around Dana's death. The phone call that would seal the case had finally come. It wasn't from an anonymous source this time. It was from Chris Klein, the man who had once been dismissed as a mere bystander. But Klein's voice on the other end of the line was anything but innocent. "I know what you're looking for, Collins," Klein said, his tone cold, "and I'll tell you everything. But you have to hear it from me." Chris Klein had been the one person who had slipped under the radar for far too long. A former colleague of Dana's from the news station, Klein was someone who had never quite fit in. His alibi for the night Dana vanished had been flimsy, but there had never been enough evidence to bring him in for questioning. But now, things were different. Detective Collins leaned back in his chair, listening as Klein continued. "I was there that night," Klein admitted. "I saw her, and I saw Hayes too. It wasn't supposed to happen like that." What Klein was about to reveal would shake everything they knew about Dana's disappearance. The pieces of the puzzle were finally fitting together. It turned out that the relationship between Hayes and Dana was far more complicated than anyone had ever imagined. It wasn't just a business deal gone wrong. It wasn't just a romantic fling. It was a carefully orchestrated plan, one that had been set in motion long before Dana even stepped into the newsroom. That night, when Dana had gone to meet Martin Hayes, it wasn't just about a dinner. Hayes had invited Klein to join them, hoping to smooth things over after Dana's persistent digging into his affairs. But things took a dark turn when Dana revealed the true extent of what she had discovered. She knew too much, Klein said, and Hayes wasn't going to let her ruin everything. The confrontation had been intense. Dana had demanded answers, threatening to expose Hayes's illegal dealings and his connection to local government corruption. But Hayes wasn't someone who took threats lightly. Klein had watched as Dana's voice grew louder, her confidence rising with every word. But Hayes wasn't the type of man who would let his empire crumble just because of one woman. The argument escalated, and before Klein could stop it, Hayes had snapped. He grabbed Dana, pushing her toward the back of the restaurant, where no one could see. Klein hadn't wanted to get involved. He had tried to stay out of it, but when Dana's cries for help echoed in the alley, he couldn't just stand by. "I should have done something," Klein muttered, his voice breaking. "I should have stopped him, but I didn't. I just watched." In the chaos, Dana had been knocked unconscious. Hayes, afraid of what would happen if she survived and told the world, made the decision that would haunt him forever. They moved her, hiding her body in the trunk of Hayes's car. But something went terribly wrong. When they tried to dispose of Dana's body, it became clear that there was no easy way out. Someone had seen them. Someone had been watching from a distance. The revelation from Klein hit Detective Collins like a freight train. The case had gone from a missing persons investigation to something far darker and more sinister. Dana wasn't just taken. She had been murdered. And Martin Hayes had been at the center of it all. But even as the truth was revealed, one question still lingered. How did Klein fit into this? Klein's involvement was still murky. He had been an accomplice, but his motivations were unclear. Why had he turned on Hayes? Why had he decided to come forward now? "Because I couldn't live with it anymore," Klein said. "I was in too deep, and I knew it would eat me alive if I didn't tell the truth. I watched a woman die for nothing." Collins had no choice but to arrest both Hayes and Klein. Their confessions were enough to secure convictions, but the damage they had caused was irreparable. Clearwater would never be the same. In the months following Dana's death, the community was left to pick up the pieces. The trial was a media spectacle, and both Hayes and Klein were convicted of murder. Hayes, the ruthless businessman who had hidden his crimes for years, was sentenced to life in prison without parole. Klein, who had turned on his accomplice, received a reduced sentence, but the guilt he carried would haunt him for the rest of his life. Dana's family and friends were devastated. Her best friend, Carla, struggled to find closure. "I lost my best friend," Carla said through tears, "and I'll never get her back." But even in the face of such tragedy, the case served as a reminder that sometimes justice does prevail. Dana Roberts' story became one of resilience, even in death. Her bravery, her willingness to uncover the truth, and her determination to stand up against corruption would never be forgotten. As Detective Collins closed the case file on Dana Roberts, he couldn't help but reflect on the bigger picture. The tragedy of her death wasn't just about one woman. It was about a system that allowed corruption and greed to fester. It was about the darkness that can lie beneath the surface of even the most perfect-looking communities. This tragic event reminds us that even the safest communities are not immune to the unexpected. The truth can be hidden in plain sight, and sometimes it takes a brave soul to bring it to light. So, what do you think happened to Dana Roberts? Was there more to this case than we'll ever know? Leave your thoughts and theories in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more chilling true crime stories. In cases like Dana's, justice may take time, but it always finds its way to the surface. Every truth revealed serves as a testament to the resilience of those who seek it. What lessons can we learn from this case? How do we ensure that stories like Dana's don't go unnoticed? If you found Dana Roberts' case chilling, don't forget to subscribe and click the bell icon for more true crime stories. Drop your comments and theories below. Let's continue the conversation. And stay tuned for more.